Okay, good
Yay.
afternoon, everyone. It is 1 o'clock on Saturday, January 2nd, and this is the weekly training that Western Liberty Network provides via Zoom, approximately 1 hour every week on a different topic, and usually with a guest trainer. We now have another person that's jumping in, AJ, and so we'll stop and wait for AJ to come on board. Welcome, AJ. How are you? It's good to see you. I can see you on the screen there. I was just beginning opening remarks. We will continue to do these trainings at 1 o'clock every Saturday going forward. And I do have one announcement, and that is FreedomWorks, their national office, will be working with us beginning in February to promote these weekly trainings so we get larger numbers of people on board, and they'll also be providing occasional content with regard to their regulatory action reform program. More on that as we come forward. Now, I want to take this moment to promote our annual conference. This will be our 11th annual Leadership and Activist Training Conference on January 30th of this year at the Tigard Embassy Suites Hotel. There will be a reception, which is always a fun party, the night before on the 29th at the same location. And the entire conference, one of the very, very few that does cost some money because most training is free, but this one is $75, includes a hot lunch, and we will see Steve Moore of FreedomWorks, a presidential, or formerly President Trump's senior economic advisor. He'll be presenting remotely. Live, we will have State Senator Kim Thatcher, myself, State Representative Mike Neerman, Clackamas County Commissioner Tootie Smith, and Lilia Zukov, excuse me, who is a board member on the Slavic Vote Political Action Committee, State Senator Dennis Linthicum, and Greg Burnett, who you also see, excuse me, on the screen. Tom Cox will also talk about Saul Alinsky tactics and how to blunt them or overcome them. So it's really incredible agenda that we have lined up. You can register at the westernlibertynetwork.org website. Hit the red register now button. You can also secure discounted lodging at the Embassy Suites by hitting the register now button. We have a deal for a 2-room luxury suite for $149 with either a king or 2 queen size beds. And that includes a hot made to order breakfast. So it's really a good deal. And you can also view the agenda. The full agenda of the conference has now been posted. So you can click on the View the Agenda button on the westernlibertynetwork.org website. Joining us is Senator Dennis Linthicum, who will be one of the speakers at this event. This is really a great annual event. It's a good way to kick off the grassroots year. And what we're focusing on, and what Western Liberty Network always focuses on, is training grassroots activists how to run for, win, and serve in local nonpartisan office, how to be effective volunteers on the campaigns they choose to work on, and of course, how to be good citizen advocates or lobbyists at both the state and the local level. So this is our purpose, and the conference is a great way to kick that off. Now, with respect to this conference, have a little bit of etiquette. Just about everyone has done this. I'm going to mute Donna. Everybody else except for Greg and myself is currently muted. If you want to speak, feel free to. I'll let Greg talk about whether he wants to field questions on the fly or at the end. But whenever you want to speak, feel free to unmute yourself and then remute yourself when you're done speaking. This way we can avoid microphone feedback issues that make it hard to hear anything. So anyway, I'm not trying to silence you. I'm just trying to avoid feedback. If you want to speak, go ahead and feel free to unmute yourself. So with that, I want to introduce Greg Burnett. Greg Burnett is the owner of the Burnett Media Group. He is an expert in social media. He provides social media platform services for his many clients, and you've heard of some of them over the years: Big Town Hero, the Blazers, the Winterhawks, a lot of different organizations. And Mike Neerman is popping on. State Representative Mike Neerman is popping on. and he really knows what he's doing. Greg is also an ideological co-traveler. He's worked on a lot of campaigns over the years successfully, and is already lining up campaigns to work for in the future. And he's also a good friend of mine. He was one of the groomsmen at my wedding to Natasha, and he is also the president of Western Liberty Network's board of directors. So with all of those accolades, I'm going to turn the microphone and the screen over to Greg Burnett. Thank you.
Hey everybody, good to have you here. Thanks, Rich, for inviting me to do this. I always love talking to activists and people that are coming up and down. Now, a little bit, Rich already told you much about me. Burnett Media Group, we have about 300 or so platforms that we manage on a daily basis between commercial and political clients. We have probably about 25% of what we do is political and about 75% of what we do is commercial. And we glean a little bit of where we go with things based on both. In other words, we take the best of what works in the commercial world and use it in political, and what works in political and use it in commercial. And we have a team of about 4 full-time people besides myself that handle our social media. And we team them up with people that make sense for that product or service or candidate in some senses. So, and everything we do is really tailored to the client's needs. Sometimes we are handling everything 100% where they never have to touch it. The best cases are when we're working directly with the client or candidate, and I'll probably refer more to candidates in this conversation. So the best social results that we get are when we have a good balance of the candidate as well as our team supporting and delivering content in the right way. Rich wanted me today to talk more about Twitter. I'm going to start on a very basic level. There's a lot there. Obviously, there's a whole science to it, and that you kind of learn over time and of what works or not. And we can get into that, of course, at any time if you'd like. But today I'm going to keep it really basic, and I have to assume I'm going to assume that people are just opening up Twitter and just rolling from there. If at any time you guys want to jump in and say, Greg, you're keeping it, go past all that, then feel free to. So forgive if this is sound too simple for some of you guys, but this is how we do it. So I'm going to start with and again, jump in, please feel free to jump in and interrupt me anytime. I'm great with that. Just unmute and ask away. I'm going to start with the screen share. I have a PDF here that I'll share with you. And Rich is going to have this available as well, so you can get it after the call if you'd like. We have a lot of these. We do a lot of training with our clients. So a lot of our candidates, for instance, we'll put them on in prep for coming up to a race. A lot of times we'll get on a year and a half early before the election and start building their social influence. We did this with several candidates this year that had some great success. It's usually the biggest mistake in social media is that you can just turn it on and it works. No, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. It's well worth it in today's world, probably more worth it than ever, and growing. It's always changing. So it is something that we have to stay on top of, and it's not an easy game. So let me just start real fast on social activism. And probably the strongest influence on political campaigns now that has ever been, as we know. We had a president that essentially won with Twitter in a lot of ways. And it's today, I don't know if you'd have that same influence with everything they've changed since the last election. So it's constantly, and literally as of 15 days ago, they changed all the algorithms again. So you're constantly relearning. So what I'm going to go over is the basics. Let's see here. Social activism. Platforms, just basic. One rule that we always seem to forget, because people tend to think that social media is Facebook. Most of you guys probably don't have a problem with that, but it is a lot more than that. Even though Facebook has majority of ownership, it is certainly not the biggest influence necessarily in social media. It depends on your needs and who you are and where you're coming from. We have many clients that Twitter is by far their biggest influencer and driving votes in our case. So I usually use the term I created that we use. It's easiest way to understand social media is a reverse mullet mentality. Social media first thing to keep in mind is that social media is something that it has to look natural and look organic and look real The more formal it is, the more format it is, the more clean it is, sometimes the more pushback you'll get in resistance. The best and most influential social media campaigns look a little bit organic or amateur is a bad word for it, but it doesn't look forced. It looks real. So it's the reverse of mold, I say, is like it's a party in the front and business in the back. So just keep that in mind. It has to look natural, but have a really good plan behind it. Some of the profiles that we manage for our clients: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, TikTok, Google My Business, YouTube, WordPress, and so on, depending on what is necessary for clients. You know all those. Twitter basics. Pros. Every network's going to have its own language, its own pros and cons. Twitter specifically is going to be political heavy, more news heavy. It is a news driven medium for the most part. If you want to get a hold of media, if you want to get a hold of influencers, if you want to get a hold of political audiences, you go to Twitter. Facebook is more friends. Twitter is more news. Relatively simply to use. It's all influencer based. In other words, it's a popularity contest, just like it was in high school. The more people you surround yourself that are popular, the more popular you become. You get somebody that's popular to retweet one of your tweets, it's the game. And the game is, you have to learn that it's all about popularity. You can't have influence without popularity. They're interchangeable. Cons: it is left-leaning. It is heavily, since it is media-based, the media, as we know, where it leans, and it's, without having any bias in this, maybe a little, but it's heavily left-leaning. It does have a lot of bots, trolls, and activists, and I'll get into what those means. There's, fake accounts. There's people that their full-time job is to harass you, essentially, and there's a lot of activists that could be doing the same thing or not. So it's not as much a real universe. Twitter is not the real world. It is certainly not. It is a PR game. Then there, of course, there's Twitter censorship, which tells you how quickly it changes. A year and a half ago, really wasn't a thing. Now it really is. It is a big part of everything you do. You have to fight it. It's just a reality of life. They have shadow banning and fact checks and bans and that are just dished out all over the place. Some of them you know about, some of them you don't know about. Shadow banning, for instance, to give you an example of how that works, is they'll limit the reach. Twitter used to be a medium that everybody saw everything you tweeted. Now it is not. Facebook really never was. For example, Facebook, their whole argument is they're going to show people content they want to see. And so if you see something that people want to see, Facebook's going to show it to them. You can think of it this way. I have almost 5,000 friends on my Facebook. I don't want to see 5,000 people's posts every day, or quickly I would leave Facebook. So Facebook says, hey, we're only going to show Greg what he wants to see, what we think he wants to see. But by that same definition, they're obviously censoring what I see. So Twitter wasn't that medium until, again, about a year and a half ago. Now they're more of a censorship media. They do limit who sees what. Fact check, obviously, also limit how people see it and reach and so on. We'll get into that more. Remember, in Twitter, the main rule is brevity is the soul of wit. It is something that you keep it simple, keep it quick, keep it pithy. The whole idea, even though they changed it out to 280 characters now, it used to be 140. It is something that is, you want to keep it simple. The quicker the tweet, the simpler the tweet, the more impactful it is. That does have a downside because your message is, it's hard to explain some of our messages in tweets, which we have to get used to doing. Twitter sign up. Start with the basics. Twitter.com, sign up, add your screen name. Things to know about your screen name. Screen name is anything you want to tell people who you are. Again, we can get into nuances of what we tell people. If you're a public figure, of course, you want to use your real name. If you're an activist, you can use whatever name you want, whatever you think is going to be impactful, because people aren't necessarily following you. You're creating influence, if that makes sense. So it depends on what brand. You have to decide up front what kind of screen name you want to do. There's a lot of long discussion into how that is used. When you sign up, the one thing Twitter does to say they try to control the number of fake accounts is that they have your mobile phone is just one-time use. If you try to sign up a second account under that same mobile number, they'll say, we're already in use, you can't do that. Well, everybody's figured a way around that. They use because obviously Twitter is full of fake accounts. Some you look at people like public figures, sometimes they'll have 30-40% of their followers aren't even real followers. So just understand that. If you want to create multiple accounts, not necessarily recommended, but it is a common strategy. A good way to do that is create a Google number. You create a Google account. We can get through that separately. But you go to google.com, create a new account, you can start an email, you get a free Google number, use that number, have that number forward to your email. Again, it's something we get into more specifically how to do it. If you want to, let me know. And you use that number to set up your other Twitter accounts. For example, like we have a lot of candidates. I have a personal account, a business account, maybe multiple personal accounts. So it depends, and you have to segment those legally now, big time, especially since the, I don't want to digress too much, but the rules on public figures not deleting or blocking or banning any tweets, which can quickly change the conversation, lose control, because they're technically public record now, legally. So you can get sued if you do that, so you gotta be careful as a public figure. Put your date of birth in. Again, if you're creating multiple accounts, put your real birth in, that's fine. But they just want to know you're more than 21, essentially. Types of accounts: primary, political, activist, or troll. And depending on what your role is in the world, pick one. We kind of went through that. A lot of public figures will have a primary and a political account. If you're for activism, you might want to create a different name. If you're a troll account, I don't recommend it. But a lot of people do find that very effective. And we can get into what that means if you're that kind of person. Just want to be aware of what it is. Complete your profile. When you do complete your profile, and I'll show you a screenshot of that in a second, but it is important to know what you want to put public, because there is a lot of doxing. That's another term we can get into later, but there is a lot. The more you got to be careful what you put public. Whatever you put on Twitter, understand that the whole world can see, and they will use it against you if you decide. The more effective you are, the more people will attack you. So if you're getting attacked, it means you're doing something right, for the most part, unless you're just a jerk. But even that has its impact. But the more you let people know, just be aware that that is public. And I've had pictures of my house messaged to me. I've had text messages come to my phone because I'll get my number. Basically vague, threats. I've had calls to my clients who tell me that will send them, or emails to them, sending them screenshots of a tweet I made. Or one of my candidates, did you know he works with so-and-so? It happens. It's a reality of life. You have to understand what the cost is. So set your comfort level, and just be aware of that when you go into it. I'm not going to go into detail on the profile. It's pretty straightforward. Set up your banner when you go in there and log in your account, and I'll go there now and show you that in a second. Let me go to that screen share now. I'm going to use one of our candidates. It's all public stuff, so there's nothing proprietary I'm showing you here at all. It's anything you could look at when you look at her account, but we handle Tootie Smith's Twitter with her in a lot of ways. So it's her and us doing stuff. So I'm going to show you hers. You go, when you create a profile, you make sure you add a nice manageable picture. This photography we did for her. We create a banner, something friendly and nice. Again, whatever image you're trying to portray to people. It's all about creating and managing your own brand. Understand that one rule I'll get back to on social media in general is, it sounds weird, but you don't necessarily want to be yourself in general, unless you're a public figure. Be exactly who you are. But if you're an activist, you want to make sure you manage your brand. Whatever that personality is, understand that you're trying to get something accomplished. You're not trying to, what the biggest mistake people make in social media is, I'm trying to say something. I need to say something. I got to say something. And that's great. And if that's what you want to use social media for, that's fine. But that's not necessarily the impactful way of doing it. And it's not necessarily effective. So you have to have a balance of being exactly who you are, but at the same time, understanding what people see you as. And how you're received is very important if you want to be effective. If you don't care about being effective, do what you want. But if you're trying to get something done and move votes or move people or gain friends and influence and actually get something done in politics, you got to make sure and manage your voice. In this, we'll put together, constantly what we want people to see publicly. And this is all, since she's a public figure, pretty much everything's public. Everything's up to her home address. But they find that as well, trust me. During that whole issue, again, social media can create a backlash. We had that one with the whole more than 6 people at your Thanksgiving dinner tweet. That was our Facebook post, essentially, we originally sent out. That created that massive 1.5 million plus impressions on Twitter and Facebook, and required us to hire security for her house. But that does not happen very often, but it does happen. Just to give you an example, that's only a month ago. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the account here in a second. I'm going to jump back to this in a minute. Right now, I'm going to give you some terms before we start that. I'm going to try to go through this very fast, guys. I hope you don't mind, because I know some of this is going to be so repetitive. So if I'm talking really fast, forgive. But some of the basic Twitter terms before we jump into the profile. Mention. If you mention somebody in Twitter, you have to use the @ sign. And then you'll start typing the profile name. Again, it's going to be the name that the person uses. And we get into that, but you should know what that is. You start mentioning, and you'll see their name start popping up, and you can tag them. If you use an @ mention, you're going to basically alert them that you're mentioning them in a tweet that you're sending. It's very important to do this. Where possible, you want to mention people as much as possible so it spreads your virality. It gets more people seeing your post or your tweet. And it gets your name out there more. Also, it lets people know that you're mentioning them in a conversation and they have a chance to respond, which is the entire point. So use mentions where possible. That's something we could talk about more if you need to. Hashtag, I'm not going to get into details of why you use these or don't use these, but hashtag # is when you want to create a topic that people can follow you by this. It's another way to sort tweets. If you use a hashtag of anything, you're trying to get into a trending topic. If something's really, really hot, say it's Kavanaugh today in the news, you want to hashtag Kavanaugh or stop the steal or whatever's going on in the news today. That way people can click on that hashtag and you can follow your people by a topic instead of by who's following you. It's another way for Twitter to interact people in common current news. Very good way to do things on things that are current and hot right now. You know, trending of the moment. Couple little acronyms I'll share for you as well. I just picked my favorite ones, just a good ones to know in common courtesy. BFN is bye for now. Good way to say goodbye. Again, Twitter is about brevity. So a lot of things are going to be acronym based. It's good to know the acronym. So if you see it, you go, what are they telling me? BFN is bye for now. I'll get back to some other ones. Bots, those are actually fake accounts, but there's a ton of them. You'll usually see a bot when it comes up. Most of the time it won't have a profile picture. Or it's a really, really beautiful woman from Central America. And it has like 2 followers and you get the idea. They're fake accounts. They're computer generated, they're computer moderated, they're AI, they're artificial intelligence a lot of times. And they're just there to cause problems and create noise. So a lot of times when you get tweets or in a political, a lot of times you get a ton of them of people that are just there trying to get you to click on buy something or change the conversation or just harass or whatever. There's a million uses for bots, but they're just be aware that everybody's not real. That's the point. BR, best regards, good way to sign off. DM, direct message. It's another way to communicate inside Twitter. You'll have a direct message area where you can talk privately to people or group message people, just like you would on a text message service. So DMing is great if you want to send somebody privately a tweet and send them, hey, did you know about this? And let them share it, or hey, conversation back and forth. It's a good way to keep it private to some extent. One thing to know, and I'll say this over and over again, on Twitter, just assume nothing is private. Even though it is, it's not. Things get leaked all the time, screenshots get grabbed, and Twitter, once you tweet, it lives forever. There's countless stories of people that will have tweets come out from 9, 10, 15 years ago even now that they said something stupid out of context perhaps, and it'll come back to bite them and potentially end their careers. So it is a very serious thing that when you tweet something, just be aware of it. Don't just go off and do a Twitter storm. Just make sure no tweet storming. Don't do the 3 a.m. stuff. Only people can get away with that are the people in the White House. So other than that, it will come back to bite you. You have to be the ultimate hammer in order to get away with doing something like that and not let it destroy your career. Most people, if something can be used against you, you just got to be aware that the rules are different depending on what side of the fence you're on. You can't get away with certain things because it'll be used against you. Just be aware of that. Email me. Good way to get people back. Feed. The feed is in your feed in your Twitter account. If you go to your homepage, it'll be a feed of everybody that's following you. It's kind of the action. It's kind of your conversation in general. It's called your feed. It's your news feed, what's going on right now, what people are saying, what people are tweeting in your follower base, and people that Twitter thinks that you would be interested in. Followers are people that are specifically following you, that have said, I want to follow you. HT, good one to use in our world, especially if you're going to mention somebody else or steal something. It's not bad to steal. Everything is stolen, but just hat tip them, HT. So if you're going to take, hey, somebody gave me a quote or somebody gave me a tip or somebody told me something was happening. If it's anything that is open and they're good with you sharing, essentially, make sure you mention them. Hat tip them to say, thanks so much for letting me know this. It gets rid of that whole plagiarism thing, even though there's much plagiarism, but gets rid of that whole, and it's also increases your popularity and influence with that person and credibility as well to people reading it. In case you missed it, basic one, it's a good way to say something really short. I don't know, good way to say it. Modified tweet is a good, if you're going to change somebody's tweet or in brevity, if you're going to quote it, make sure you put a little MT there to say that I am modifying somebody else's tweet so they can say that you didn't misquote them, essentially. Note to self, basic, self-explanatory. Period before mention is probably the one that everybody is wrong. It's kind of, almost nobody realizes it, but if you do an at mention, it goes to your follower base and to people that your audience. If you do a dot at mention, then you're going to reach outside your follower base. So it's something, if you want everybody in the world to know it, boom. If you want just your audience and your person you're tagging to know it, just do the at. Something that's very rarely used. Reply, basic. Click reply, reply back to them. Retweet, one of the biggest things you do in Twitter. RT. SMH, shaking my head. You can go through these yourself if you want to. I'll go through the ones. Tweeps is a fun one. Tweeps is kind of a cool term. It's basically, it's like the Twitter form of peeps. They're your people that follow you on multiple platforms. They're your friend base. They're your tweeps. Okay. You know what a tweet is? It's when you send out a message. You post something. Trends, I'll go through that in the profile real quick. That is going to be what's happening right now, what's trending. Some of that's been a little bit controversial recently because that's also being controlled on Twitter decides what's trending. So it's not necessarily, it used to be based on what was actually the most popular on Twitter, and people were able to, activists and groups of activists, including bots and so on, were able to control what was trending real quickly. So Twitter decided to actually hand select what's trending now. Twitterati, that's going to be your top Twitter crazy people with the most influence, the people that are obsessed with Twitter that use it constantly. Unfollow, obviously, it is when you want to stop following somebody. Okay, via, it's another way to say hat tip. I got this via so-and-so. Okay. I'm going to go over to the profile and show you these things, what they are. But make sure when you set up your profile that you set it up, good rule to do if it's your primary Twitter, set it up on your desktop, your mobile, and your tablet if you've got a tablet. And make sure it's all signed in and ready to go. It'll take a few, make sure you check it, confirm it, because it'll say new device alert, and you'll have to confirm it with a tweet and so on, or with a text, I mean. So make sure you have your devices set up and clean and ready to go so you can actually use it from your mobile when you're running around as well. Twitter is meant to be used on the fly. Log onto your primary devices and save your password so you don't have to worry about each time you do it. A lot of times Twitter will even cause an alert if you're in a different IP address or different location. It'll say, we don't know who you are. So just make sure it's saved so it recognizes you. Obviously, you want to download the Twitter app on your mobile device if you have it. Settings and privacy, it's a good thing to go into settings. I'll show you that in a second too. Settings and privacy, make sure you drop into your settings and privacy and decide how much you want people to know. And it's going to be dependent on who you are, where you're coming from. 280 characters, again, just keep it brief. It's good if you can keep it. Quite honestly, the best tweets are going to be the ones that are short. Sometimes you'll do threads where you do multiple ones, but keep it short. I'll go through all of these areas on your home screen when we get there, okay? So let's go over there real fast. Again, using 2D's profile as an example, just because we're working on that right now. Let's rock through our page. Okay, get your home. When you log into Twitter, you're going to see your home page first. Your home page is going to be a feed of people that you're following, in your audience, anything in the world that's going on around you. Kind of a good thing. It's kind of your news brief. It's a way to digest news. And you'll see it's your dashboard, essentially, everything's going on. Get used to seeing it. You can up here in the top, click in and actually write and send your tweet. Okay. Getting into details is probably another conversation on exactly how to do it. I'm just talking about the concepts today. You can add images, GIFs. There's lots of fun. You get into emojis, which are big now, sadly. So homepage is your main dashboard. Okay, hashtag, here's where you can do your trending. This is going to be everything that's happening right now, what's trending, Fiesta Bowl in Iowa State, of course, first week of the year. So things that are happening right now, you can go in and, so what's trending in the news, and you can click on anything that has a hashtag. To give you an example, searching by hashtag, it's going to be people that are tagging that same hashtag. Okay. So you can sort anything you want by hashtag in the top menu. Anything at all. Okay. And that's cool if you want to find topics and find content, and you can reshare it from there. I'll get back to that in a moment. Notifications. It's a notification of things that are happening in your world, of people that have mentioned you. Like, see this Smith Tootie, somebody was mentioned from her speech yesterday in the Can Be Current. Okay. And so you can go in here and say, oh, the Can Be Current mentioned me. You can see the conversation that was had on this. If you want to unfollow, block, if you want to reshare it, retweet it, I should say, the right terminology, like it, so on. And I'll get to those in a second as well. But this is where people that are mentioning you, interactions with you, people that have said stuff or retweeted you. It's just your internal dashboard. Okay. Direct messaging, I'm not going to go too much into that, but that's essentially your internal private messaging. That's why I click password for fast. There's nothing private there, but it's where you can have your private messages back and forth. You can find that down on the bottom right-hand side. You can click on and write a new message if you want to. Pretty easy to do. Bookmarks, not a lot of people use it, but I just did one as an example today because we don't use it almost ever because we use a different software. But if you want to, you can bookmark tweets as you're finding them. It's a good way to reference back to them. You can say, I'm going to bookmark, and you can decide what to do with them later. That way you can say what conversations you want. It's a good way to organize your Twitter experience if you want to. I'll show you how you can do that basically under this tab. You click on it, you want to remove or add bookmarks. Okay. Lists are a great way to really build your audience and it's a great way to find your followers. Again, we use a software for this, so we don't use lists a lot. Internally, we use it inside our software socially. But if you create a list and add a list, it's a really, really good way, again, to organize things. And I'll show you exactly how to use that in a bit too. That's a whole other conversation. Your profile, this is your main page on what you've tweeted recently and how it's doing. So you can go in here and go, oh, here's something we sent out. Oregon has has 778 likes, has 2,000 comments on it. 1,000 people have retweeted it. You can see that analytics pretty darn good, actually. So good audience that way. So you can see how each tweet is doing and what's going up. Okay. On your last tab here, you're going to find your topics. I don't use that very much. Moments is another conversation, again, altogether. It's a whole area of how you can create stories and moments inside your Twitter page. It's for people that are just really heavy into using Twitter, so that's a lot deeper conversation. Twitter ads for obviously if you're ad side, you don't want to get into that necessarily. Analytics shows you, how you're doing, which is important to me, of course, is how many people are seeing your tweets, mentions, and followers recently. You've got 1.36 million impressions in the last 28 days on this one example. Settings and privacy, this is where you find it. I mentioned that earlier. Go into your settings and privacies. This is where I would just take your time. It's all self-explanatory, but it's a good thing to do when you set up your account. Go into settings and privacy and go through your account. Make sure you have what you want people to see. Security, account access, who has access to your account. If you have software linked into it, it's a good thing to check all the way through it, find out, make sure you have it set up the right way, content you can see, what you want to mute and block, so on. It's all self-explanatory. It's something you'll learn real quickly just by using it, but check your settings and privacies to make sure you see what you can set your level of comfort. So you can go in here and say, do I want what interests I want to see? Do I want people to see my my phone number or address, or which you don't necessarily put your address in here, but any personal information, what kind of tweets outside your follower base, so what. Just set all that inside here. Everything else here you can pretty much ignore. Back to your home page. If you want to write a new tweet, you can do it up top on your home page, or anytime you can click the little button here with the little Twitter feather and create your tweet. You can cut and paste or type away and do @mentions and hashtags. See what pops up. Stop the madness. Okay, so you try to use a tweet again when you're in hashtags. Again, hashtags a whole conversation, hour in itself, on why you would use it. Mentions are a whole hour in itself at least, but try to use in general hashtags that other people are using. Making up your own doesn't really help much unless you're actually an influencer and can create the momentum. So use hashtags to get into a conversation. Don't create your own necessarily. Okay, before you tweet, you write your tweet, tag who you want to. Use a hashtag if you want to bring a conversation that's current, and then decide who you want to see this tweet. You can say, do I want people I follow me, only people I mention, or everyone to see it? Typically, it's everyone. You're good with that. And then you tweet. Okay. You can add images if you want to. You can add GIFs internally. GIFs are really cool for getting attention. You can go in here and go, drop the mic. Okay, boom. Let's add a little GIF in here. Okay, pretty easy to do. There's a whole Giphy is engaged to it. You can add a little emoticon. Be interesting in your tweets is where I'm going. Okay, think about it. You're creating a little story when you're tweeting that people are going to see, and we'll get into that in a moment here. But the main purpose here you have to understand is that you're trying to send something. Be creative, stand out, be bold, make it interesting. Don't try to say something just because you want to say it. Say something because you think somebody's going to want to hear it. And I know it, again, sounds fake, but it's not. I mean, the whole point here is, again, think about high school. It's a popularity contest. You know, you don't want people to hear every single thing, your waking thoughts in the middle of the night. You want people to understand what's going to be interesting to them, because we're selfish people in general as humans. So we don't care necessarily about things we don't care about. So just be aware of that. Again, the notes are on the bottom here. You can add it and make it interesting as you want, and then tweet it out. The second you tweet it, it lives forever. Remember that. So we're going to discard. Okay. Let's go back to, okay, there's one more notes here. On the right-hand side, you'll see another action of what's going on. This gets you into that same place where you can check in your trending, so on. So get you a shortcut into what's trending right now. One thing to do inside, I'll get to daily maintenance in a minute, but it's always good when you're growing your audience. On your homepage, go to who you should follow, and follow people that you think either follow you, that are interesting. This is where you grow your audience. You're saying, I'm following you, and they get a notification. Hopefully they follow you back. Or if they're already following you, it's showing, hey, thanks for following me. I'm following you as well. If you're public official, it's going to be a little more limited on what you do, on who you follow, because they're following you more than you're following them. If you are an activist, it's fine. Follow everybody you want and follow back. You are going to be held somewhat accountable for who you follow as a public official, just something to know. A good one in the news this week was, what's his name? Guy out of Texas with eye patch. What's his name, Rich? I can't remember right now. But I can't remember his name right now. But yeah, sorry, obviously I should know his name. But he had the veteran that had the injury from Iraq. Anyway.
And Crenshaw.
Thank you. Crenshaw. So he had one this week in the news because he had one of his people that was managing his campaign followed basically a prostitute, a call girl page. And so here's all the public news across the country about, Crenshaw is following $1,000 a day hookers. Yeah, just be careful. That's all. Even though it means nothing who you're following, you're not necessarily endorsing them. That's how news can be used real quickly against you. I guarantee you, if you went into anybody's account, you're going to find a bunch of fake accounts. You're going to find prostitutes. You're going to find porn that you're following by accident to some extent if you have a big audience. So as a public official, just be really careful on that. Activists, who cares? Unless you have a public name to uphold in that sense. But they are, you just understand everything you say can and will be held against you. That's all. Okay. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. You're building your audience, build your influence. Again, everything in Twitter is about building influence. You want to make sure you have, if you don't have influence, you don't exist. You can tweet all day long, and if 5 people see it, who cares? You're not getting anything done. You're just yelling in your own room. So it is a game. It is a popularity contest. It is about building your audience so more people see it. One term I don't have on that list there is virality, but that's exactly the point you're trying to track. One of the main things we look at in analytics, for instance, is you look at virality. This is on one of our software page. We can go to, I'll show you something. One of the things we track, one of the key areas of analytics that we track is we're trying to see how much of a post is viral. Here's your term virality. This percent is really key. It's a whole combination of all the stats, but exactly how many people did you reach in a tweet? How much of that was viral, which is outside of your audience? So in Twitter, how many people shared it with people that are not following you? And how many people saw this message that are not current followers of yours? The whole point is to get that number up, get that number up, get that number up, so those people will follow you and build your influence. The higher that virality is, the more likely, if you get 20, 30%, that's massively viral. If you get 5% on a typical tweet, it's going to be okay. But you want to reach more people. You want to hit more virality, obviously get more clicks and shares and comments and reactions. But the end result is reach and virality, okay? Kind of an internal term, but get you to know where that is. I was talking to you there and showing you a screen that I wasn't showing you. So let me show you real quick. This is what I was just talking about. Reach, virality, clicks, shares, comments, reactions. So again, 18%, typically if you get 20, 30%, that's fantastic. You're trying to get more people to see something and a higher percentage of that to be viral outside of your audience. Again, that's the goal. Go back to it. Sorry for the flipping back and forth here, guys. Okay, build influence. That's what it's all about. Make it part of your day. It has to be a habit. Again, some people do this. They'll tweet 50 times a day and then they'll be a slave to it and they'll be on their phone constantly around. We all know who they are. And that's fine. I don't have the time to do that. I tweet very rarely myself on personal, but because we handle it for other people. But it's, my Facebook in general, it's such a big public audience. I don't put anything political on my Facebook, for instance. So you get to choose your comfort level and what it is you're trying to get with that. Okay. So whatever your comfort level is, understand that and work it. It can't be something you forget for 2 weeks. If you're trying to build an audience and you go once every couple of weeks, I'm going to get in there and do it, and then forget about it for a while, you're just not going to get anywhere. The algorithms on Twitter are going to see you exactly for who you are, and they're not going to see you as somebody trying to play the game, and you're not going to get rewarded for that. So if you want to play the game, play the game. Decide what your level is and do it. Make sure you're commenting regularly, loving other tweets, retweeting, and direct messaging where possible. Bookmarking is fine. Again, that's more internal. Just so I mentioned here, a copy link. A lot of times there's an area in there where you can copy the link on the drop down and use that for other social medias. Tweet regularly, at least once a day. I'm going to wrap it up here in a bit, Rich. I'm going to go through this very fast. Build followers. Like we said, follow people, okay? Again, you want to surround yourself with influential people. Get as many, if the person is more influential, more popular, that's who you want to get. Is reach for the sky. As far as you can get somebody retweet you that has more influence than you do. If somebody direct messages you, reply. Build and check your lists. It's a good idea. I showed you how to do the lists in there. There's a little, I'll go back to that in a minute here, but again, probably a separate conversation on lists itself, but you can see how to do it in there. You add lists and create, and that's a good way to build your followers and know who it is, okay? 1 second. I only have a last page here. I'll go through and then I'll take some questions to see how much you want to go down. Content, just in general rules and content. Create and maintain your brand. I mentioned that a few times. I know it sounds a little bit cerebral, but it is, it's how I think in agency business, but it is something you need to get used to. When you are an influencer in Twitter or any social media for that sense, you want to understand who you are, how people perceive you. If you are an activist as a gun rights activist, be it and understand it. Don't try to make it about everything. Try to make it whatever you're trying to get done, be that. If you are an aggressive, outspoken guy that's going to be a bulldog, be it. But understand what people see you as. If you're a politician, of course, you need to understand how to manage that brand, how to manage your front facing, because in a world of perception, especially when it's 280 characters, it's everything. It's how people perceive you as reality. So keep it real, but keep your personality managed. Be aware that you're writing to others. I keep repeating that. Be bold, blunt, unapologetic. If you spend your time writing things you have to apologize for, you're doing it wrong. Have a thick skin, especially if you're a politician. So do not, people are always worried about their ratings and their constituency and so on. Nothing is personal. The only time you block and delete somebody is if they cross a line that's going to hurt something specific. It's not going to be about them insulting your family. Quite honestly, if the more that they attack your family or your person or your morality or whatever issue it is, the more they look like jerks. The more someone steps over the line, as long as it's not a threat of violence, the more I want them on my Twitter page, because they're actually helping me if I'm a public official. If someone comes on there and makes the most absurd claim and stops short of threatening violence, I'm good with that. So just be aware that it's not necessarily bad behavior. It's behavior that doesn't get you where you want to be that you need to worry about. Okay. A good example of that would be recently, again, with Tootie, when you have an organized campaign on her private profile. If you have an organized campaign where you hit a national story and then suddenly you'll get 200, 300 profiles assaulting you with the same copy and paste tweets. And it happens. It's organized Twitter assault, essentially. And those are the ones you have to worry about because they don't cross the line and they're not over the top, but they're just basically overwhelming the conversation. And you have to know how to deal with that in real time. As an activist, you're going to run into some of that, but you're not going to be as concerned with it as a public official. Make sure before you say, and that one thing I'm going to say, tweets are immortal. That's the biggest thing we learn now. People are going back 10, 15 years and it lives forever. It doesn't matter if you've changed your position on something, doesn't matter what you've done in life and context. They will take that from 10 years ago, 140 characters and change your world if you're not careful. Just be careful on that. It's a good idea if you're a public official. It's what we do with all of our candidates is we go back in time and we make sure that there's nothing that is there that could be used against us in a very clear way and get rid of it. If it's something that's, something said in jest that can be taken out of context, doesn't matter. Just get rid of the stuff that doesn't, if you're just thinking about running for office, just get rid of that old stuff because we've all said stuff, out of anger or joking or just that could be taken the wrong way if you see it. Just delete it. Get rid of it. It still doesn't mean it's not going to be showing up, but get rid of it. It's harder to find. Before you tweet something, a good rule to have is make sure you check your grammar and context. Do your homework. Just make sure you don't do something stupid where, even though it's a social medium and it's okay if you misspell things now and then, don't be ridiculous about it. Don't look stupid. Okay. It's okay to shorten and abbreviate things and use not, the perfect English, Oxford grammar kind of thing. But if you're just accidentally misspelling things, you're going to get attacked for it. Just destroys the conversation. Just be a little careful. A big one now, especially more than anything else, is confirm your source and the validity of it. If I know it sounds weird and I'm kind of questioning my own people, but it makes sense. One quick rule and suggestion out there is if you're going to share a news source and it's in a bunch of news sources, say there's a big news story today and it's a conservative story. Just one quick little suggestion, it works really great, is if there's 50 news sources for something, find the one that typically disagrees with you the most and share that one. If it's a story that is like hot today that typically disagrees with you but is in line with what you want to tell people. So I will look for an MSNBC article on something if it supports what I'm looking for and want to share it out more than I would a Fox News article, for instance, if it's the same story. It steps out. It shows. I know it sounds ridiculous, but media, is all about opinion. And if you can find a person that typically disagrees with you that agrees with you. In this case, it's going to be have a lot more validity instead of it getting dismissed outright, being, it's another Fox story. You know where I'm going. So find the person as far away from you as possible to share a news story that agrees with you. Just a suggestion. But do check the validity. If you find something and you go, the headline, the number one mistake people make on articles is you didn't even click it to read the first sentence. Click on an article, read it for 1 second. Just read the first sentence. The headline is so misleading as clickbait. Just click it, read it before you share it. Just take that extra couple seconds. Put yourself in the follower's shoes. Again, circling back to the whole idea is make sure you keep in mind how people are seeing you when you send this. And one last comment for public officials, just be really, really careful about who you give access to your social media, and be aware that in politics especially, they need to be a social media team that somewhat agrees with you and that is really has a lot of validity and understands where they're going. If don't hire some social media company you've never heard of or somebody that you don't have direct access and control to. Like in our candidates, not a single tweet goes out or post goes out without me seeing it. Even if I hire another person to help me create the content, it goes to an approval process to where I see it, I check it before it's sent out. Even the candidates, for the most part, will go through the approval process so I can schedule it at the right time to get the most impressions. Make sure that there's no spelling errors and grammar errors in there, that kind of thing. Typically, we find our level of comfort there. Some are great with it. Some are, it makes better sense if I'm in the middle of the process. But have that point where there needs to be one person that touches every piece of social media before it goes out publicly. Just make sure you have a plan in place. If you don't plan, it's going to bite you. That's my summary on the startup. I could go down the rabbit hole on any one of these topics, hashtags, direct messaging, followers lists, and so on. But I just wanted to give you the overview on Twitter really fast. I know it's massive rapid fire here, but I hope you got something out of it.
Okay, are there any questions
Rich?
Of Greg? One question I have is, if I come up with a hashtag and I use it, there could be a lot of other people using the exact same hashtag. So if people wanted to follow me, what would keep them from following the wrong provider of the hashtag?
Well, I would say you don't want to create one that is, it's like any search term. When you're using Google, for instance, if you want to have there's a balance there, Rich. If you want to use a hashtag, hashtags have their pros and cons. If you want to use a hashtag that people are going to find you for, you're also running the risk that it's going to be something that's popularly used for other things. So you technically, if you're wanting to actually create something and create the momentum and create the actual story and own that story, you want to have something unique. If you try to use one that is commonly used, you're going to get buried in the mess. There's no way to stand out on that besides your followers directly. So if you're trying to gain influence and create a story and create the momentum on a hashtag, make it unique. If you want to jump on the bandwagon of somebody else's, typically I'd say for the most part, unless you're a big influencer, a hashtag is something you're jumping into. Okay. So sure. It's a stop the steal. It's a resistance. It's a, whatever, ACCB, right? ACAB, I should make it A. You can tell I'm not Antifa. So it's the hashtags that are going to be, people are going to search. Like during this whole thing in Portland, PDX protest, it's you go to like a big influencer like Andy No or something, right? And he'll have a lot of times he'll be following people, but you can follow him by any hashtags here. Ted Wheeler, for instance, obviously you want to use hashtag your name. That's a mention there. But I think I answered your question, Rich.
Yep, you did. Thank you.
Right. Just create your own. If you're trying to own the conversation, create it uniquely. If you're trying to jump on somebody else and get involved in the conversation and get into a conversation, use one that's already popular.
Okay. If anyone else would like to make a comment or ask a question, go ahead and unmute your microphone and do it now. Or if you don't want to talk, you can text it by using the Zoom group chat window and typing in your question sent to everybody. So is there anyone else out there who would like to ask a question? a lot of information to absorb if you're not already well versed in Twitter. We are recording this training, and within a week it'll be up on the training tab of the westernlibertynetwork.org website if people want to review it.
And I'm sorry I ran through that. I'm trying to get through here and under the time allotment to respect everybody's time in the 1 hour time. But if you're interested in more deep dives onto strategies behind social media and Twitter and Facebook and so on, that's another conversation for each one of them. It is something that definitely it's an art when you get to it. But the basic use is pretty simple, straightforward. Getting something out of it, that takes a bit more.
Okay, if there are no takers for questions or comments, we will call it an afternoon. We will have a training next Saturday at 1 o'clock. Stay tuned to the westernlibertynetwork.org website or the Western Liberty Network Facebook page to see what we will have coming up. We've got the calendar filling up. Dennis Linthicum has agreed to do one. Thank you, Dennis. He's on the call. Mike Neerman has already done one, and we will see how many people we can get to provide this information. I want to thank Greg for his time and his expertise and his willing to generate both, or to his willingness to contribute both to this effort. And if there is nothing else that people would like to say, we will end the call and wish you all a very good.
I appreciate everybody.
And very happy
week.